In this lesson, we're going to be showing how to solve a quadratic equation by completing the square. So with this method, as we go through, it might seem a little tedious, but it's necessary to understand how to use completing the square for when we get to finding the standard form of a circle, which will come up in Module 2, Section 2.8. So although it might seem like, why do we have to do this? It is an important method for solving a quadratic equation as well as being able to get a standard form of a circle. So our first step is that if there is a leading coefficient, we need to divide it out of all terms. So if there was a number in front of the x squared, we would have to divide it out from each piece. In our case, we don't have a number in front of the x squared, so we can move on to the second step. The second step is that we want to rewrite our quadratic equation by grouping our x's and our x squareds on the same side of the equation while moving the constant to the other side. So right now we have x squared minus 6x plus 4 equals 0. But what we want to do is we want to move over the 4 so that our x's are the only thing that's on the left-hand side. So that way we would have x squared minus 6x equals negative 4. So just rewriting it in x squared plus bx equals c form. Our next step is a two-part step. What we'd like to do now is take half of b. So b, remember, is our coefficient of x. So we're going to be taking half of b, so I'm going to be doing half of negative 6, keep the sign, which is negative 3. And then the second part to this step is that we want to square that answer. So we're taking half of b and squaring it, or half of that middle term coefficient and then squaring it. So that means the negative 3 I'm going to be squaring, which would give us a positive 9. So first we move our constant over, then we take half of that middle term coefficient and square it. The reason for doing this then is what we really want to look at is that we have our current quadratic equation of x squared minus 6x equals negative 4. And what this 9 does that we just found helps us to complete the square. So what we do is our next step is that we're going to add that 9 to both sides of your equal. So I'm going to have a plus 9 on the left side and a plus 9 on the right. So be sure that we're adding it in both places. Once we get this new equation, we have x squared minus 6x plus 9 equals negative 4 plus 9. What we want to do is we want to factor the left-hand side and simplify the right-hand side. So, easy enough on the right-hand side, we would just have negative 4 plus 9, which would be 5. And then on the left-hand side, we want to factor that. Well, in this form, I would just find what multiplies to the left and adds to the middle. Our factors of 9 that add to negative 6 would be negative 3 and negative 3. And we can actually rewrite this as a square, which is, this is where that whole completing the square comes in, is that x minus 3 I can really write as x minus 3 quantity squared still equal to the 5. Any time that we're doing completing the square, when we get to the point where we can factor, we have to be able to write it in this form of x minus 3 quantity squared, or x minus something, x plus something quantity squared. Another thing to note is that this minus 3 is actually the same as the minus 3 that we got when we took half of our middle term coefficient. That is always going to happen. So now you might think, oh, well then why do I need to square it back up in step 3? Well, we had to square it because remember we were adding the 9 to both sides. Okay, so if you forget to add it to the left and to the right side, really that important piece, then you're not going to end up with the correct answer at the end. So we move our constant over, we half the middle term coefficient and square it, add that number to both sides, then we simplify the right, factor the left, and what it should factor into is some quantity squared. That's us completing the square. Our last step is, once it's in this form, we can solve using that square root property. So part of the reason why we just learned the square root property in the previous video is so that we can then complete the square. So right now we have x minus 3 quantity squared equals 5. So remember, in order to solve this, we would take the square root of both sides. So that square root of x minus 3 squared comes out as the absolute value of x minus 3 equals the square root of 5. And again, remember that inside the absolute value means the solution can either be positive or negative. So the inside x minus 3 can really be equal to either a plus a positive or a negative square root of 5. And then from here, just continuing to solve for x, we have x equals positive 3 plus or minus the square root of 5. And if we write this with the solution set notation, we would have 3 plus the square root of 5, and then 3 minus the square root of 5. And that's how you complete the square.